are grateful this morning for the cleansing rain and the first few days of cooler weather on campus. Hallelujah. We are excited and joyful as we begin this new academic year. We are so glad that we're able to gather in person, and that simply fills our souls to be in community with one another. We invoke blessings and success on our students, our support staff, administration, faculty, and all those who invest themselves in making this institution successful. In the days ahead, we pray for courage to make the right decisions, compassion to truly see and care for one another, and humility to admit when we've made mistakes or inadvertently harmed one another. Make us the true ladies and gents on which Centenary was founded. Grant us wisdom and instill in us the persistence and fortitude to excel in the coming year. Amen. Will you please remain standing and turn in your hymnals to number 139, and let's sing out with gusto.
to our students, staff, faculty, board members, and guests. We are so glad to have you here this morning to open the academic year. Today is the first official event that encompasses the entire community. During the first few weeks of August, a number of different groups arrived to campus. We welcome our first-year students and promptly put them on a plane to Paris. Residence life staff participate in important training and planning sessions. Student athletes begin practice 2-a-days, I believe, correct? It's rough in August. Faculty return to their offices to prepare syllabi and participate in professional development and more. With returning students just moving in this last Sunday, this convocation marks a time when we are all here together as one, and being together is important. Nothing can replace the value of interaction that occurs on this campus every day. In our classrooms, faculty expertly guide activities that develop students' interpersonal skills and provide mentorship that are crucial to lifelong success. In our offices and our conference spaces, staff and faculty collaborate on official business and often in informal moments at the water cooler to plan, make decisions, and simply connect with one another. And individuals and groups across campus work so hard to hone their skills and their artistry for the playing field, for the concert hall, and for the playhouse, and to thoughtfully plan events and celebrations that are diverse, inclusive, and meaningful. I am so looking forward to these interactions, these events, and yes, even these committee meetings. And I am glad we are here together today. As I thought about today's convocation and my role in acknowledging the honor code in court and in accepting the honor book, newly signed by our first-year students, I considered how I interpret honor. It's a word I use pretty often, and though I mean it when I use it, I hadn't stopped to consider it for a little while, so I did. When I paused and quieted my thoughts, the images that emerged for me were of my grandfather, my father, and my brother, all of whom served in our country's armed forces. My younger, but he would want me to say bigger, brother, is a retired United States Marine who served in Afghanistan. This is what the Marines say about honor. Honor guides Marines to exemplify the ultimate in ethical and moral behavior. Never lie, never cheat or steal. Abide by an uncompromising code of integrity. Respect human dignity and respect others. Honor compels Marines to act responsibly, to fulfill our obligations, and to hold ourselves and others accountable for every action. I am moved by this definition both because of the strength of the words chosen and because I have observed my brother demonstrate this honor so many times. At Centenary, we take our commitment to the honor code very seriously. Your academic work is to be your own, and you should feel compelled to hold yourself and others to our high standard. I am proud to say that I have observed our honor court members consistently demonstrate integrity, respect in their work and deliberations. And today I'm really pleased to accept the honor code book from our Chief Justice, Camila. Where is she? There she is. It is my pleasure to introduce someone very special to you. Dr. Christopher L. Holoman is the 31st president of Centenary College. Dr. Holoman is an accomplished scholar who earned his PhD in political science from the University of Chicago and who regularly speaks and teaches on and off campus. He is an accomplished leader who in his time at Centenary has not only righted the ship, providing balance, stability, and transparency for the campus, but successfully steered the ship through unprecedented challenges, including, of course, a pandemic. While many colleges find themselves still bailing water, to further the metaphor, from these challenges, President Holoman has steered Centenary forward toward new and exciting ventures, including new programs, new facilities, and the largest incoming class in a decade. And let me just emphasize that that is unique among colleges right now to emerge from these challenging times with such stability, with a committed and skilled leader. President Holoman is a committed family member, including husband, father, and grandfather. And he is a valued colleague and mentor who his cabinet members admire and seek wisdom from regularly. It is my privilege to work with him every day and to introduce him to you today, President Christopher L. Holoman.
Thank you, Karen. That was very generous. It's an honor to work with all of my faculty and administrative colleagues and staff, and now to work with you. I want to welcome you, of course, to Centenary's President's Convocation. Welcome to our students, our faculty, our staff, and our visitors. We have 4 members of our Board of Trustees here in front. Sometimes there's a little confusion. Board of Trustees are not engaged in the day-to-day administration of the college, but they do what we call keep us directionally correct, headed in the right direction, and they have the ultimate, also the ultimate fiduciary responsibility for the college. They're also my bosses, so please be nice to them. Also, once again, welcome to this wonderful space. I mentioned this a little bit at the end of move-in day. This is a really special place on campus, and I hope you will come to enjoy it, and that this will be the scene of many great memories for your time here. I'm glad you got a chance this morning to hear the majestic and wonderful organ. Thank you, Dr. Watson. I'm already looking forward to the postlude. Thank you to the choir who so nicely prepared, working hard in just a week to prepare a beautiful piece, and to everyone who made this ceremony possible. Convocations go back to at least the 1500s. Colleges use them for all sorts of things, to mark new presidents, new buildings, but most often they are doing exactly what we are doing today, marking the beginning of a new academic year and welcoming you into a community where learning is the highest value and our prime goal. As I think Dr. Soul mentioned, to the first-year students, this is also the last, or at least one of the very last, official events of orientation, although there's certainly lots of great first-week events still to come. So this today is really aimed largely at you. I hope you've been made to feel very welcomed and are excited, and not too overwhelmed about the year and years to come at Centenary. Over the first 6 years of doing these talks, I've used my topic, a number of things that I thought you might benefit from hearing, experiences or tasks that you might need to accomplish. We've talked about journeying and vocation and telling your story, being in community. What does orientation itself really mean? Last year was a little bit different, as I wanted to talk about the context we found ourselves in this pandemic time, and we talked about the context and the nature of change, given the massive upheavals that we had gone through. This year, too, I'm going to go in a little bit different direction in response to things going on around us in the world and in our society. And it's worth pausing for a moment to acknowledge that we do have to take into account the things that happen around us. There's this old caricature of higher education as the ivory tower, and somehow we're removed. I had someone tell me once, not in Shreveport, oh, wait till you get out and work in the real world. And I said, well, every time I write that mortgage check, I feel like I'm in the real world. Every time I have to take my children to school, every time I have to go into my dean's office, I'm responsible to a boss too. You bet I live in the real world. Anyway, we do take account of the real world. And what I'm most concerned about now, and certainly what has motivated this talk, are the forces of division that are continually trying to split us as a society. This division, in my opinion, poses a very real threat to our country now, but I'm going to focus more narrowly on the threat to our ability to carry out the important tasks that we do together as a college. Many of these forces are well known and not new. There was a book some of our faculty can acquaint you with as early as 1950, famous book, The Lonely Crowd, The Lonely Crowd. More recently, in 1995, a colleague of mine, a political scientist, Robert Putnam, wrote about the idea of social capital and its decline, and he noted as an anecdote, as sort of motivating metaphor, if you will, that the data showed that more and more people were bowling, but league bowling was way down. People weren't in bowling leagues, they were, to use the title of his essay and then book, bowling alone. The things that formerly have brought us together as a society, churches, VFW halls, the corner pub, yes, bowling leagues, the common experiences derived from only 3 TV channels where we all got our news. Those things are gone. Instead, we sit in our man caves and our she sheds and simply consume the world around us. Now we don't even have to go to work, go out to work, where we were often, by necessity, interacting with people differently from us. And friends, people are, as the oath says, enemies foreign and domestic are making money from these divisions. They're gaining power from these divisions, and we need to resist that. Many of these changes are made possible by technology, and technology may have accelerated these trends. And some of these forces are newer. I'm drawing here on the work of a she's actually a psychoanalyst. She's a professor at MIT. Her name is Sherry Turkle, and she's written a lot over the last few years about crucial conversations and other kinds of interactions and the role of technology. As I say, she's at MIT. So thinking about the role of technology, let me read to you just a little bit of what she said. How easy it is for a fascination with technology to take well-intentioned people away from empathy and its simple truths. So technologists become invested in the promise of electronic medical records and forget how important it is for physicians to make eye contact with patients. Engineers become fixed on the idea of efficiency, and soon it seems like a good thing to prefer texting to face-to-face talk, because on screens we can discuss personal matters with less emotional vulnerability. Talking to and through machines makes face-to-face exchanges with people seem oddly stressful. Does that sound familiar? And less necessary. These days our technology treats us as though we were objects, and we get in the habit of objectifying one another as bits of data, profiles viewed. And she concludes, only shared vulnerability and human empathy allow us to truly understand one another. At some point, I have no doubt some of you are thinking, yeah, stop yelling, get off my lawn, old man, and let me get back to TikTok. But I'm not going to back off for 2 reasons. First, our inability to converse with each other threatens some of the most fundamental work that we are supposed to do together in these next 4 years. Because in fact, we are not an ivory tower, but this is supposed to be a special time and place for you. It's a great example, I think, of what's sometimes called a liminal space. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of a liminal space or a liminal time. The most easiest example is a doorway. If you stand in a doorway, you're not in one room or another. You're neither here nor there. You're neither in or out. Liminal times and spaces give you opportunities to look at things in new ways. A number of years ago, when I was a new administrator at a Catholic college, and the college sent me on pilgrimage to Assisi and Rome so I could learn more about St. Francis and the background of that college. And our pilgrimage leader emphasized a pilgrimage is a liminal space. It's not vacation, but it's not your day-to-day work, and take that time to explore. College is supposed to be a liminal space. It's always been recognized as a time when students are in a special place between childhood and the full weight of what we now call adulting. It's a time for you to try out new ideas, to meet new people, to do new things in a relatively risk-free environment. And colleges have always served that role, and we have this ideal of spirited debate, the free exchange of ideas, intense interactions, and that's what we should be. That is the model. It's a worthy one. Iron sharpens iron, the Bible tells us. But I'm sorry to say that wonderful kind of debate isn't possible unless the participants are stopping to hear one another. If instead of listening, you're simply preparing your next zinger, that's not going to be a particularly productive conversation. Yelling at one another is not an exchange of ideas. But it goes further than that. We live our lives today in echo chambers. It means that we don't even agree on what words mean anymore. We can't just talk it out because we're not even using the same language. Words have been redefined or weaponized so that even mentioning them, let's talk about X. I'm not talking about that because I don't believe in it, or I've defined it or had it defined for me in a way that we can't even come to common understanding. So my message for you today, friends, is that we need to go back one step and we need to work on our empathy. Human beings are complex, and again, I have colleagues on the faculty that are much more knowledgeable about all of these things than I am, except what I see in practice. So I said to Dr. Zunick before we walked over, I said, be prepared for a cleanup on aisle 3 when he has to come behind me and fix all the things that I say. But human beings are complex. We know that we are programmed, hardwired, although notice we have to use mechanical metaphors, programmed for both selfishness and altruism, for narcissism and empathy. Studies have shown it. We have mirror neurons, they tell me. That's why when you're walking down the street and you come up to somebody, you both move in the same direction because you are mirroring, unconsciously mirroring one another. We have both of those things within us. Both of those instincts. But it also seems that when push comes to shove, the selfish side wins out. Perhaps it's even more primal. It goes back to our days, maybe even before we were fully human, Homo sapiens, a fight or flight response where you had to immediately identify what was your enemy. And that's because, again, I'm told empathy uses 2 parts of your brain at least. Empathy is understanding how others feel, yes, and being compassionate about them. Neuroscientists say it's when the emotional center perceives the feeling of others and the cognitive center, the thinking part, tries to understand why they feel that way and how we can be helpful to them. And it's a very important skill. I ran across this recently. Many of you are interested in pre-med or other medical associated professions. Health professionals who show high levels of empathy tend to get better adherence to treatment from their patients and better patient outcomes. And I was talking, this has been a few years ago, I was talking to a man who had been on the faculty at Johns Hopkins. He was now president of Meharry Medical Institute in Nashville. And when he was on the faculty at Johns Hopkins, he was on the review panel for medical students. And he said they explicitly, as part of the annual review, ask about their medical students. Would you want this person taking care of your mother? Beyond healthcare, empathy is associated with better personal relationships, more successful social behavior, and lots of improved dialogue. In its most complete form, empathy involves understanding the emotion of other people's, other person's feeling the emotion and responding appropriately to them. Empathetic cognition, emotions, and behavior. Some people are good at understanding the emotions of others, but not necessarily responding to them. Or maybe vice versa. So we can teach people the parts that they lack. And that's the good news. And that's why I'm talking so loudly and longly, if that's a word, about this. 3 points. Empathy is necessary, but in short supply. Empathy can be learned. And empathy needs to be practiced, lest we fall back to our more primal, selfish nature. Let me just say a few words about how we might learn empathy. And again, to make sure I cite my sources, I'm drawing on a nice article from Claire Keane Miller. Just a few tips. Think about this as you move into this new time and these new roles. Her first rule, her first lesson for, not rule, but first idea for learning empathy, talk to new people. Trying to imagine how someone feels is often not enough, researchers have found. Luckily, the solution to this is pretty simple. Just ask them. A psychiatrist at Berkeley says, for me, the core of empathy is curiosity. It's what another person's life actually is like in its particulars. So try it. Start conversations with strangers, or invite somebody that you don't know very well to lunch. Follow people on social media with different backgrounds than you, different races, different religions, heaven forbid, different political persuasions. Miller says, here's one, put away your phone and other screens when you're having conversations, even with the people you see every day, so you can fully listen and notice their facial expressions and gestures. Number 2, try out other people's lives. Go to someone else's church or mosque. Go to their workplace or their home. And if someone's bothersome to you, ask why. Again, it's not a question of is someone right or wrong, but how can we understand? Maybe the person is grumpy when you see them in the first thing in the morning because they don't live on campus. Maybe they've got a long commute and have had terrible traffic, and so they're not going to be as friendly and chipper in the morning. When you go home next time, maybe you experience this in Parents' Weekend, you're going to have changed, and your parents won't have noticed that. And you're going to have to, as I said on move-in day, be empathetic to the way that this child that they've raised for these years has gone away and now is someone different. Hopefully someone better, but certainly someone different and more interesting. Read books, fiction. Lose yourself in fiction. There's studies that show that reading books about other people's lives, this guy who wrote a book called The Empathy Effect, you enter the thoughts, hearts, and minds of another person who's not like you, and the research shows that does break down barriers. Learn from nonfiction. The last book that Dr. Sherry Turkle wrote is called The Empathy Memoir. Is that right? The Empathy Diary. It's a memoir of her life, and she's lived a pretty interesting life and had some interesting experiences. Read about the lives, struggles, fights against oppression, history books, essay collections. And finally, have hard conversations. This is the hardest one. But respectful conversations go a long way towards deepening people's minds. There's one study that took place in Florida where 500 canvassers were polling and discussing an issue around the rights of a minority. And as they didn't just talk to people, they asked the people that they were talking with to tell them about their own experiences. When were times that they had been treated differently? And afterwards, the voters in the study had, in fact, developed more empathy, more understanding of other people's experience. Maybe you're familiar with, I'm not super familiar with, I've had a brief rundown to it. There's a peculiar place, given the context, on the internet. It's a subreddit called Change My View. Old folks ask people what a subreddit is. Some people have described it as the most civilized place on the internet, although that's certainly a low bar. People respectfully discuss controversial topics and are constantly changing their mind. And one of the founders there said the goal is not to be comfortable, it's to stretch ourselves and expose ourselves to others' points of view. I compare it to yoga, getting comfortable by being uncomfortable. If you're comfortable, you're probably not doing it right. And the rules of that subreddit are useful. Don't be rude or hostile, don't create echo chambers, engage in the conversation. If no one has changed their minds after 3 rounds of going back and forth, consider agreeing to disagree. And if you change your mind, be proud of it and tell people you did. There's lots of other ways to think about empathy. But remember, the main thing is it doesn't have to be hard. We're all humans. We have in us this desire to live in community, to connect with other people. And building on our empathy, having conversations with others can make that happen. It doesn't have to be hard. In closing, I turn to the words of Abraham Lincoln. As most of you know, Abraham Lincoln was elected in a time of deep division in our country. We think things in Congress are bad, but one senator had beat another senator almost to death on the floor of the Senate with a cane. He was elected in his first inaugural address. He was addressing a country that was on the brink, but had not really yet started civil war. It's the messiest presidential election in history, and again, I guess that's a high bar. 4 major candidates running. He was elected. A lot of people didn't believe he really wanted to hold the country together, and in his inaugural address, he went right to the heart of this division. He referenced back to a time that there were actually people still alive that remembered the Revolution. And certainly a lot of people that remembered the War of 1812. They knew the shared history of the country together. And he said, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained it, we must not break the bonds of our affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will swell the chorus of the Union, and when again touched, as they surely will be, by the better angels of our nature." Friends, empathy is just another way of saying the better angels of our nature. We must be touched by those angels so that we can resist the forces that are trying to pull us apart. You're here in a special time and place. We're going to work hard to challenge you with hard ideas and things that you won't agree with. But we're going to do it respectfully, we're going to do it together, and we're all going to learn something. Welcome to Centenary. I hope you have a great year and 4 years. I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to ask Reverend Broderick to come up and deliver the benediction. We're going to sing the Alma Mater. I'd like for you to all stand for both of those things, and then I would also like for you to stay standing at your seat while the academic procession recesses. Thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you.
Friends, may your better angels go with you to help you be passionate, be bold, be brave, but more than anything, be kind. Go forward in peace.